Good morning, Houdat Nation, and welcome to week 7 of the NFL season for all of our Bayou Blitz family. Now, unfortunately, the New Orleans Saints didn't exactly welcome us with open arms to week 7. Still waiting for them to actually take the field and try to play professional football, but we'll see. We'll see how that turns out. We know it ain't going to happen this week. And on that note, joining you for your Bayou Blitz Sunday edition are myself, Bob Rose, and over on the other side of the screen, Brendan Boylan. We are here to pick up the pieces, any salvageable pieces, and see if there's anything to move on from. Good morning, Brendan.
Good morning. We figured we'd bring you guys something this week since schedule conflicts did not allow us to join you guys live for Thursday night. And then we also didn't put out a formal post game simply because 1, it was late, 2, who really wanted to talk about that? And then 3, or at least what I had texted Bob was maybe we should wait because maybe some news will drop in the coming couple days and we can, talk about that so we don't have one podcast that gets completely eliminated by the news that happens maybe a few hours later. I'm sure you guys know what I was kind of referring to. That news never came. So here we are now to discuss, what is the current state of this team? Is the season over? There's a lot of kind of little things to talk about today. And so, Bob, I want to start with one of the things I just mentioned. Is the season over? At this point, we have 10 more games to go. Is it fair to say that the season is over at this point?
No, I don't think it's fair to automatically write off the season. I could see why the people that are writing off the rest of the year are doing so. This team, especially in the last 3 weeks, have given us really nothing but reason to write them off. But I mean, mathematically, and I know that's the grasp of the desperate, mathematically, you're still alive. But mathematically, they are more than in it. The Saints obviously have already, without even getting to the midseason mark, already painted themselves in a corner, where they desperately need help, outside help, to even get back into the race. And I'm going to try my best to say this with a straight face. With 10 games left, if you go 7-3, 8-2, now you're looking at a 9-8 record, 10-7 record. Like I said, Brent, I'm trying to say this with a straight face. You go 9-8, 10-7. You stand a pretty good chance of winning this division, or if not, at least being in the mix, near the top of the mix for a wild card spot. I know it's ridiculous. I've seen this team for the last 3 weeks, just like you guys have. They look as far from a playoff contending team as you possibly could. But for those of you clinging to the injury excuse, and I'm not, but for those of you clinging to it, you get this team healthy in the next week or two. You keep your head above water by stealing a victory or two in the next couple of weeks while you're getting healthy. And now you have pretty much the same squad on the field that you won the first 2 games of the year with, when everybody, all the people that are writing this year off, were saying, wondering out loud, hey, is this team a Super Bowl contender? Well, I mean, Brennan and I said at the time, no, but we also didn't think they were as bad as the squad that we had seen lose 5 straight and just watched put out humiliating, embarrassing performances for the last 3 weeks in particular. So, I mean, the team is somewhere in between that while healthy. The problem is they got to get healthy. They got to remember, how to play defense, which I know is in one of these segments upcoming here. But is the season over? No. Do I wish it were over? Based off of the type of coverage that we have had to give out the last 3 weeks, yeah. But to automatically assume that they can't rebound when we watched this squad with pretty much the same personnel. When we watched this squad, sorry for the interruption. When we watched the squad for pretty much the last 2 or 3 years, put together a run down the stretch. To say that they're incapable of doing that again, I think is premature. But again, anybody who does write it off, I can understand why. I mean, I've watched this putrid display myself, for the last 3 weeks or so, and I understand why you want to write it off, but to do so automatically, I think, is a little bit foolish.
I think it's hard to not say that it's over because of how putrid it's been the last few weeks. Now, a lot of it, you say, when it comes to the injuries, like what we've said for weeks is like it's an excuse to a point, right? Everybody's hurt. There might not be another team in the league that's as banged up as the Saints are, but you're still in the NFL for a reason, right?
Mhm.
And I think that's kind of what it boils down to. Now, on Thursday, the fact that it was like Spencer Rattler had an average of 2.5 seconds to get rid of the football. Like, there's not a lot of quarterbacks in NFL history that are going to do really well when you only have 2.5 seconds to make a read and get the ball out of your hand.
Yeah, and that's at the snap. That's not from the time he has the ball in his hands and is to set up. That's from the snap.
Yeah, so once the ball gets in your hands, it's really like somewhere between like 1.75 and 2 seconds to make a decision. Again, I don't care who's playing quarterback. The offensive line's been putrid. A lot of that has to do with injuries, but we also had our concerns going into the season. Receivers, I mean, just to continue the joke, I mean, they got to really like what they have in the room, I guess. I did see Valdez-Scantling is coming in to work out for the Saints. I did hear that the Saints were at least inquiring about the availability of Jets receiver Mike Williams, that some of you remember from San Diego or LA. I'm not sure if he was in the league during that transition or not. He might have just always been a Los Angeles Charger. And then obviously his time at Clemson as well. But again, at the end of the day, like, it's really hard to find any optimism moving forward, even with 10 games left. Because it's like, well, the offense can't move the football. The offense has scored 3 points in the last 6 quarters. You can put some blame on the rookie quarterback. You can put some blame on the offensive line. You could put some blame on the receiver. Like, you could just put blame everywhere. We've talked about this plenty. I don't love to throw him under the bus because of the talent that he is and how he'll go down as a New Orleans great. But, I mean, it was very visible on Thursday, the frustrations of Alvin Kamara, how he checked out of the game at points. And some of that is just frustration. I don't think it was so much, in the past we've talked about, like, well, if you don't get him involved early, like, it's all like you couldn't get him involved early. There was the offense from the very first drive, there was no offense. So it's not like they could get him involved anyway, but you saw the visible frustration with Alvin. That's just, you saw the frustrations on social media for Alvin as well, with the rumors that, he demanded a trade and whatever.
Yes, he did not.
Right,
Folks.
he did not, and he came out and said that. And he also came out and said something that not a lot of players say, and that's, hey, like, if I were to have done it, I would have made the announcement myself. Which I think also shows you how much he wants to be in New Orleans. So all those people that want to go back to the summer and say, like, oh, he's not going to be here, like, he does want to be in New Orleans long term. But for me, it's really hard to find any optimism at this point in the season. But before we go forward, even in these tough times, Bob, football's still back. It's still the most wonderful time of the year in terms of that. And football is here to stay until February. So I know you guys are extremely happy about all that. I guess, like, if you're not super miserable watching the Saints, I guess you're happy about that. Over 1 million fans across 33 states got in the game last year by making picks on Underdog. Bob and I finally hit one. That was not this week because Thursday there's not there. I don't even think we had one on Thursday. Given it was the Saints offense, so it's like, well, I don't know. Like, did we get anything? Probably not. I didn't even have to go back and look to know that we didn't hit on that pick'em. So, but Bob and I do have another one for you today. We're just going to put a small one together for funsies because we want to give you guys something to tail today. So we'll see if it hits. But let me tell you, guys, it's making picks on Underdog is straightforward. Signing up is even easier. Just head over to Underdog's simple-to-use mobile app or UnderdogFantasy.com. Sign up with our promo code BayouBlitz, and Underdog will give you a free pick to use on your first cash pick'em entry, plus up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you deposit. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code BayouBlitz, to claim your new customer special of a free pick. And your deposit offer must be 18 or older, 19 or older in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 or older in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona. You also have to be present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. If you're concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. If you're in Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT-STEP to 53342. And finally, if you're in New York, you can call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. That's 467369. Bob, real quick before we continue our conversation on what the state of the Saints are, we'll keep this really easy. This is just a small one that I put together because the Saints desperately need receiving help, and they did not trade for either of the players that I will be mentioning. So that's the way why our picks are the way they are, because the Saints desperately need receiving help. I also like that you have the Broncos shirt on today. But here we go. Hopefully you agree with all these. Amari Cooper, higher than 39.5 receiving yards in his first game with Buffalo.
You're asking?
Yes, I'm asking.
No, I think he goes lower. I think Amari Cooper is going to be a part of the Bills' offense, but he's been with the team not even a week. So I expect a limited package for him today, probably just a couple catches, maybe in key situations, certain situations, or near the red zone. I gotta go lower on this total for Amari this particular week.
Okay. Devontae Adams, higher or lower than 58.5?
Same, and for the same reasons. I'll be interested to see if Devontae Adams plays at all, because if he does, he's missed the last couple games with the Raiders, including all practices because of an alleged hamstring injury. Yes, I said alleged. It was very clear he wanted out of Las Vegas, and I'd said at the time, I said he is not going to play again. For the Raiders, he's not going to suit up. He's not going to return to practice unless they trade him. That's the hamstring injury. My opinion. I have no inside information on this. Just my opinion. Also based off of Devontae Adams, his past actions as well. He is one of those players that if he wants something, he's going to sit out until he gets it. So if he plays at all, that just confirms what I had been saying. But even if he does suit up, I know he's going to be a big target for Rodgers. The two of them are buddies. Going back several years. But even with his The relationship with Aaron Rodgers, I can't see the Jets being able to get him heavily involved in their offense, as desperate as they are for an additional receiver. With him being only with the team less than 1 full week. So yeah, I'm going to go lower on that total as well.
All right, final ones for you. They're both quarterbacks. One is making his case to potentially be the MVP of the league. The other is lucky to be a starting quarterback at this point. So which one would you rather start with?
Let's go with the potential MVP, because the other one just makes me laugh. I want to end that segment out on a positive note.
Okay, great. So Josh Allen. There's no lower options, so it's either do we take this one or not. Does Josh Allen throw for 199 yards today for the Buffalo Bills?
Oh God, and forgive me. I've been mentally checked out of the NFL since Thursday afternoon or Thursday evening. Excuse me. I'm not even sure who the Bills play today.
They play Tennessee, who will be starting Mason Rudolph.
Yes. I take that for Josh Allen. 199 or over. I assume it's 199 and a half. So basically, he has to throw 200 yards. Yeah. I think Josh Allen will do that.
Okay, so we'll take the higher for Josh Allen. Finally, you know what? I'm gonna let you guess who is the quarterback that I'm giving you a projection for that is lucky to be a starter at this point.
Sam Darnold.
No, sorry, it's Deshaun Watson.
Deshaun Watson's lucky to be a free man, let alone a starting quarterback in the NFL.
There's no lower options. Are we taking this? Cleveland plays Cincinnati today. Deshaun Watson higher than 159.5.
Oh, God, that's tough because the Bengals do have some injuries in the secondary. But Cleveland just traded their best receiver, and Deshaun Watson has been god-awful since going to the Cleveland Browns. Nonetheless, I'm going to say more than 159.
Higher than 159. All right, so those are our picks for the week for you guys. Depending on how you guys want to play this, you can go with the standard payout, which is a 4.12 multiplier, or the flex, where if you get 4 correct, you get a 2.47 multiplier. If you get 3 correct, you get 0.89. So even if you get 3 correct, you're not even getting your money back. So Bob, how do we want to play this?
I think we need small victories right now, Brendan.
I was going to say, a small victory, you don't even break even, though.
Well, right. That's why I think I'd go with the first option.
All right, we're going 4 for 4.
Yeah.
All right. Guys, that's our play for the week. And we have locked it in. So there is that. Back to let's go back to the Saints and kind of where they are in the world of whatever their world is at this point. We'll answer this question from DJ before we go a little forward. DJ asks, would you let Rattler finish the year or bring back Carr whenever he's ready? So this is an interesting one because it doesn't matter what we think. It has been made very apparent that Carr should be ready by the time the Saints march down to my neck of the woods in Charlotte and take on the Panthers, and that he is expected to get the nod as well. That's an interesting one, Bob, because by playing Rattler the rest of the year, I think if you're the Saints, you're almost throwing in the towel for the season and just going, we'll see what the rookie's got. Bringing Carr back says there is some hope that there's something salvageable from the season, and obviously that's the direction the Saints are going. But, Bob, take it all out. Let's answer DJ's question. If we were in the position to make that decision, what route would you go?
Completely agree, and we've addressed this before. That Derek Carr, once healthy, he's going to be the New Orleans Saints starter. Period. End of story. But to answer your more specific question, if I'm making the move, and I don't say this out of any disrespect to Spencer Rattler. He's shown a couple do good traits, that are at least intriguing enough to maybe build on. But with Derek Carr, I mean, you won your first two games. You should have won week 3. You should have won week 4. So I mean, with Derek Carr as your starter, you could have very easily been 4-1, heading into that Tampa Bay debacle a couple weeks ago. I'm not saying Carr has been playing lights out, but I am saying he's played well enough not to lose his starting job. If I'm making the call, once Derek Carr is healthy, and he feels like, I mean, we've talked about an oblique injury before. It's very difficult for a quarterback to throw, to get torque on the football. Once Derek Carr is more than medically cleared to me, Derek has to tell me, yeah, Bob, I'm ready to play. I think I can throw every pass you want in the game plan. I'm going to show you that I can throw every pass you want to in the game plan in practice. Once I see that, Derek Carr is back as my starter.
I think I'm in the same boat. As much as I like Spencer Rattler as a prospect, he got hit a lot more than he should have on Thursday and exited the game because of it.
Mm-hmm.
There's no need to risk that. And Carr is obviously the better quarterback at this point between the two's careers. So yeah, Carr's going to come back. Carr's going to start. Gives you the best opportunity to win football games, which is ultimately the goal. Even though we have to look past the results. And yeah, that leads us to what we're about to talk about now, and that is Dennis Allen. I tweeted Thursday or maybe Friday morning. I don't remember. Thursday's a little bit of a blur for a lot of us, right? With how bad that was. I tweeted something along the lines of, if DA was still the head coach on Monday, which all signs point towards, I was going to be really interested to see what Saints Twitter was going to look like. Because personally at this point, and we had talked about this even going into Thursday, that we felt that if the Saints lost in embarrassing fashion, it was just ready to pull the plug. Well, and the Saints lost in embarrassing fashion, and Dennis Allen's still the head coach. So, Bob, with that, the posed question is, what is the state of the Saints? For me, I think the current state of the Saints, to an extent, is insanity. Because what's the definition of insanity? Is, doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. And look, I mean, DA's got his fair share of opportunities. We're in year 3. He has a career losing record as a head coach. He has now officially dropped into the bottom 20 head coaches in NFL history in win percentage. For those of you who have not seen that statistic, he is now one of the worst 20 head coaches in NFL history in terms of win percentage. Now, some of you could come back and say, well, that stint with the Raiders doesn't help. And it's like, well, yes, but that's still a part of it. And in New Orleans, it hasn't been great either. It's been sub 500, if my maths. So at what point do you look at it and go, okay, we haven't made the playoffs since Dennis Allen's been the head coach. We've came close a couple times, but haven't been able to, finish the job, which we've seen coaches fired for less.
Mm-hmm.
Just throwing that out there. We've seen coaches who get you to the playoffs and can't get out of the first round or get to the second round or different circumstances. But shoot, Marty Schottenheimer went 14-2, went to the playoffs and then got fired. So I thoroughly believe it's time. The Saints have made it clear they don't think so.
Yeah.
Mickey Loomis's comments, as much as we laugh at them, I think we really do have to take a microscope to it and really analyze it in a serious matter of the comments of, well, you have to look past the results, because that's alarming for your GM to say at all. You're really struggling. I probably would have felt better if he went, look, we're hurt. We had a strong start to the season. The injury bug really bit us, and you have to ride it out with us. If that's the message to the fans, I still don't love it, but I don't
Right.
hate it to the degree of, well, you got to look past the results, because at the end of the day, it's
Right.
like, well, what's the point then? Like, yeah, you can look past the results if you're playing like Pee Wee, Pop Warner, Little League Baseball. I just watched a T-ball game of 4-year-olds yesterday where they don't keep score and they bat through the entire order every half inning. Yeah, if I'm watching that, yeah, look past the results, because, well, there are none, right? Nobody's keeping score. But when you're getting paid millions and millions and millions of dollars, and the Saints are a multi-million-dollar industry, and the NFL is a billion-dollar industry, like, well, yeah, the results matter. So that's where I think the Saints are. I think the Saints are in a state of insanity where they're going to ride this out with Dennis Allen. I don't have as many complaints about Derek Carr this year as I did in years past, but they're going to ride it out with Derek Carr as well. And in all honesty, you might not even see DA get fired at the end of this year. They might write out the entire contract. They might write out Derek Carr's entire contract and just go, you know what? And the excuse this year is going to be, well, they were really injured, or they were really hurt, and this, that, and the other. And that's where I'm going to get extremely frustrated with a lot of it, is that's what's like, I see, if I could look into my little crystal ball here, that's what I see moving forward, is that this team's just going to be like, you know what? Nope, it was an injury-riddled season. Even if they were to like lose out, I could see them go, oh, it was an injury-riddled season. We never really got our mojo going. It wasn't a fair shot for DA. It wasn't a fair shot for Derek Carr. It doesn't show us who these guys really are. That's what I can see happening, and that's why I see the Saints where they are right now.
I'll tell you, I think with your one word, insanity, I think you nailed you nailed it right on the head. Because I was thinking to myself, okay, if one word, state of the Saints, and since you already used insanity, I'll go with dysfunction, because that's what I was thinking before you said insanity. I'm like, you know what, that's much better, because it's obviously very clear that the Saints are not going to fire Dennis Allen during the season. And listen, this organization does not do things that way. I get it. And rarely, very rarely, do I advocate moving on from a head coach while you're in a season, because I mean that's a desperation move. That very rarely, and I mean lottery ticket type of percentages, very rarely, it works out for you. And the franchise has only done it 3 times in their history, and not since 1975. Tom Benson bought the team and took it over in 1986. So in other words, the Benson family has never done things this way. Mike Ditka was allowed to work out his contract. Was not fired in the middle of the season. And as bad as Dennis Allen is, he's not Mike Ditka levels of bad. Yeah, I say with some hesitation, because it's quickly getting there. We talked about injuries being a valid reason to a point for this team's struggles. I always counter that with, that's a valid reason for the offensive struggles. It has not been a valid reason. I repeat, it has not been a valid reason for the defensive failures. Now, in the last couple of weeks, you've lost Pete Werner, Marshawn Lattimore, Will Harris, now Paulson Adebo for the year. Speedy recovery to you, Paulson, by the way. So, I mean, and really in the last 6 quarters, that has changed. But, I mean, other than that, Dennis Allen, you're a defensive guy. Your defense currently ranks 26th in points allowed, 32nd in yards allowed, 28th in rushing yards, 28th in passing yards. You've given up 130 receiving yards to Juju Smith-Schuster. A combined 9 catches and 108 yards to Darnell Mooney and Ray McLeod. 192 all-purpose yards from Sean Tucker. 594 total yards, 277 on the ground to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, both franchise records for them, by the way. 460 total yards to a Kansas City team without their top two receivers, without their top two running backs, and with a major hole at one of the offensive tackle spots. That's the most the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid Chiefs have had in 16 regular season games. You gave up 460 total yards, 172 on the ground to a Philadelphia team without A.J. Brown and with offensive line injuries of their own. I could go on and on and on. But this Dennis Allen defense has given up 60 points in their last 6 quarters, 84 points in their last 2 home games. The last 5 games, I throw the Carolina result out. The last 5 games, this defense has given up 429 total yards, 180 yards on the ground. Dennis Allen, you're a defensive guy. What the F? I mean, yeah, seriously. And I said it last week. I said it in my article that I wrote prior to the Denver game. If your head coach, if the only feather in your head coach's cap is the fact that he's a good to very good defensive coach, based off of the results that I just read to you guys, that's obviously out the window. Then what the hell are you giving me? That's why I say it's time to move on. It's obvious. I called for it after the Buccaneers game. I said that if they didn't have a short week, the time was then. And then I went on to say, okay, now you have a short week. You're facing your former coach. If he embarrasses you, and he did, it's time to make the move. They didn't. They won't. And fans, no matter how much we cry, scream, attack them with logic like I do, it's obvious that the Saints won't. So yes, the state of the Saints currently is absolutely. I'll combine words. We like to invent words because we're such geniuses on this show. Dysfunctionity. Combination of dysfunctional and insanity. Dysfunctionity.
All right. I like it. I don't like where the Saints are. And so I'm going to pose you with this one because it's came up more this year than ever. Should Mickey Loomis's job be looked at as well? Now, keep this in mind. And I saw this somewhere, and I know there's some truth to it. I don't know how far it goes. But if I remember Tom Benson's will correctly, Mickey Loomis is named throughout it because of the dysfunction between the Benson family and ownership. Now, a lot of that's been worked out since Gail Benson, but I'm not sure if, God forbid, something happened to Gail, where that power transfers.
I believe Mickey Loomis is still the executor of Gail Benson's estate as well.
So there you have it. So as much as you might want to look at it and be like, well, should Mickey Loomis's job be on the line? It's not going to be.
No.
So, but I'll still pose the question because you and I know this from working multiple jobs, is when you start to feel comfortable and you know that you have all the job security in the world, a lot of times your performance changes on a day-to-day. Should Mickey Loomis be looked at a little closer for the last 3 seasons?
Yeah.
4 seasons.
It absolutely should, but it won't. I'll tell you whose job should be in serious jeopardy, right along with Dennis Allen. Everyone in this scouting department, including Jeff Ireland. Alan Ulrich says this often, especially lately. That while the criticism of Dennis Allen is extremely valid, Um, you look at this team and their lack of depth, and you and I expressed concerns about the lack of depth at several positions coming into this year, all off season, Brendan. Why does this team have a lack of depth? Well, everybody automatically wants to point fingers at Loomis and the restructured contracts, of aging players. That, in my opinion, that does play a role, but a smaller portion than what you think. This team does not have depth because of the fact that they've not drafted well in the middle and late rounds. You can't live off the 2017 draft forever. And as we sit here today, there's only 2 players left on the roster from that team: Marshawn Lattimore and Alvin Kamara. What have you done since? It looks like you've hit on a couple high draft picks in the last couple years. Fuaga looks like a player, although don't turn on the tape of his outing against Denver. He looked like a JV player. But Fuaga looks like a player. We know Olave is a player. Penning is finally starting to come along. So, jury is obviously still out on Kool-Aid. Alontae Taylor, he's a player. So you've hit on a couple recent high draft picks. But your misses on players like Peyton Turner, Marcus Davenport, that's caused you to desperately sign a Chase Young, who really for his first 4 or 5 weeks, Chase Young was playing well, not the last 2. It's caused you to reach the lack of depth in the middle rounds has exposed your zero depth on the offensive line. You have all high draft picks there. In fact, everybody but Eric McCoy was a first round pick, and Eric was a second round choice. But once they get hurt, what do you have? Why? That's because you drafted people. You missed on draft picks like Nick Saldiveri, in the middle rounds. Higher round failures like Isaiah Foskey, who can't see the field. Alan has spoken openly and often about Jeff Ireland, and everybody's job in the scouting department should be in jeopardy. I completely agree there. Mickey Loomis ain't going anywhere, folks. Any other franchise except for the Dallas Cowboys, where Jerry Jones is owner, GM, coach, pseudo coach, water boy, and Dak Prescott's therapist. Every other franchise in the league, the GM would absolutely be in jeopardy, along with the head coach and the other members that I mentioned. And that's just not going to happen in New Orleans. Fact.
I'm interested by what you just said about the scouting department, because frankly, Jeff Ireland was once looked at a guy that the Saints could lose. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, he was a pretty popular name there for how successful the 17 draft was, and certain hits throughout the years. But in terms of a full, complete draft class, when I say full and complete, I mean, if you have 7 picks, you have 5 guys from that draft that are on your roster for 2 to 3 years minimum. We really haven't had that.
Yep.
And we cover every draft on our draftathons. It'd be really hard for me to even go back to like 2020 or 2021 and try to name you every pick without having it in front of me, or name you more than like the first 2 rounds. Like, I'd really struggle to do that because the Saints haven't hit in any rounds other than that. That's a great point. However, I also think part of the depth issue is the stupidity is a harsh word, but we'll use it. It's the stupidity to go into these off seasons and just be like, nah, I like what we have in that room. Because this off season, I know the 2 positions I harped on a lot And it was even with the Willie Gay signing, like linebacker was one where I'm like, you're an injury away from just being screwed at linebacker, which we're now seeing with Pete Warner out and Willie Gay missing a little bit of time there. And that's no disrespect to a guy that we both like in DeMarco Jackson, but it was like at that point, it was like, well, DeMarco's coming off injury. We don't really know what's there. Is he really going to be a guy that you can count on to be like an every down linebacker? I don't know. So that's one. The other one I don't even have to tell you guys about because I should be the president, secretary, vice president of the Saints Need Receiver Depth Club. Because I said it all off season. I was like, you don't have anything past receiver 2.
Yep.
Or you have a lot of questions.
And that's when we thought A.T. Perry was going to be a player.
Right. And he's not even on the team. And we both liked it. It was like, oh, if A.T. Perry could step up, like, okay, you have a good 1, a good 2, and a decent 3 option as he continues to develop. And it's like, well, now the Broncos game is a great example of, well, Chris didn't play. Shahid's out for the season. You know, Mason Tipton's a really good feel-good story to make the roster. I don't want Mason Tipton catching like 4 passes week in and week out. Or whatever that number was. Like
it was 6.
6. I don't want Mason Tipton being targeted 8 times a game. Like, you're not going to win football games that way. And that's no disrespect to Mason Tipton. You know, again, feel-good story. Happy he made the roster. Really happy he got an opportunity to be like a starting receiver and show what he can do. And yeah, there were some things that I took from that and was like, okay, well, like Mason Tipton could be a reserve receiver on this team for years to come. But again, I don't want Mason Tipton getting 8 targets in a game.
I don't want him having to get 8 targets in a game.
If he just happens to get 8 targets and the Saints are moving the ball and they're playing well, different story. Yeah. I also don't want to have to I also don't want to be at a point in the season where someone uses Photoshop really well or gets ChatGPT to create something that is like a letterhead saying that the Saints are having open tryouts and that people were actually showing up.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want that to have to be, but again, like depth issues too, are just going like, no, like we're good with what we have. And it's like, no. And that's the biggest part of training camp. I'm not even talking about now, like your 53-man roster and your practice squad. Like the purpose of having training camp and having a 90-man roster during that is to just bring guys in. And I'm not saying you have to go and bring in all these like whopping guys, but like, okay, you want a good example? To me, do you know who's still a free agent right now? And it just baffles me is Hunter Renfrow.
I know, and I knew you were going to say that, but there are 31 other teams that don't want Hunter Renfrow either.
That's true, but you don't bring him in during the offseason. Like you don't just go, you know what, we'll take a flyer on Hunter Renfrow, or we'll take a flyer and see if whoever else. Like, that's just the one receiver I know off the top of my head, but like there's no other like, well, let's just bring him in and see what happens. They did that. Not this offseason. The offseason before, they brought in every wide receiver that has ever played a snap in NFL history to at least be on the training camp roster. They just didn't do that this year. And they didn't do that for a lot of positions. It was one of those off seasons where, yes, like Willie Gay was a big signing, bringing certain guys back, and restructuring was big. But I felt the lack of, I don't want to call it filler signings because that makes it sound like those guys aren't important. But those signings in the middle, that are like, okay, well, it's not a huge name, but it's not like somebody I've never heard of. And it's like, okay, I didn't know that Billy Joe Bob was still playing football. You know, I didn't see a lot of that this year. And that was frustrating. And I think it's starting to show a little bit too, because there's all over the place.
More than a little bit.
Like there's so many places.
And listen, I think that's also a failure of the scouting department. I understand that this team has been in a position the last 3 or 4 years in particular, where they not only don't want to spend a whole lot of money in free agency, they simply cannot spend a whole lot of money in free agency. What that means is, A, that's all the more important to hit on your draft. And B, the free agents that you do bring in, you better hit on them. There better be some players there, some diamonds in the rough, whatever terminology you want to put. DeMario Davis, while I love the signing back in 2018, a lot of you fans didn't know who he was. All you saw was the team that he came from. And by the way, I wish I took screenshots. Yeah, a lot of you were saying what some stereotypical fans always do. Yeah, the Saints need fill in position here. The Saints need linebackers. The Saints need linebackers. Team, Saints, we signed DeMario Davis. Fans, not that linebacker. I meant this linebacker or that linebacker. The team just doesn't care about winning. And you can fill in the blanks with every single signing that this team has had, certainly while Brandon and I have covered them for the last 8 or 10 years. But not, nonetheless, if you're going to be selective with your free agency decisions, like you were with DeMario Davis, and under the radar guys, then you better hit on them. Instead, you get Cedric Wilson, Nathan Shepard, who played well last year, but has been invisible this year. And we could go on and on. I thought Will Harris was playing reasonably well before he got hurt. Jonathan Abram, he'll intercept one pass, but give up 4 big plays. It's guys like that, or guys that just can't make your roster, like all the wide receivers that they brought in last year, like you pointed out. Again, failures of the scouting department, failures of the personnel department. This team is more than just a failing of Dennis Allen, far more.
I almost want to end on that because
I'm good with that.
A lot of people want to point the blame at DA, and DA deserves a ton of it. But it's so much more than just a singular person, because I've seen a lot of people, and we'll end on this. I've seen a lot of people hop in your posts and in comments, whether it be on Facebook or your replies on Twitter, and be like, well, what is the head coach's job? And it's like, well, you oversee everything. But you oversee players.
By the way, we are not criticizing the question. It's just it's a great example.
Right. It's a great example. And the head coach overlooks personnel, other coaches, this, that, and the other. But he has nothing to do with, for the most part, there are some special exceptions across the NFL. And maybe even Sean Payton during some of his time in New Orleans. But, he doesn't have anything to do with the scouting department. DA doesn't have anything to do with the scouting department. DA, for the most part, doesn't have the final say in personnel moves. He might have some say.
He has most say. They do let him. I know, Mickey and him are pretty much a tag team duo there.
But there are things front office wise that DA has nothing to do with. And that's why Bob and I can both agree, DA deserves a lot of blame because he's in charge of the product on the field. That might be the best way to put that. Product on the field. He's not responsible for everything that goes on upstairs. And that's where a lot of the issues are. This is more than fire one guy and everything's solved. I've said for a long time, especially when it came to the restructured contracts and pushing these things out, at some point the Saints had to pay the credit card bills.
Mm-hmm.
When it came to that, I think at some point the Saints also had to pay for the credit card bills of the fact that this dysfunction is not like this singular year. Right? We've seen the dysfunction go back to the last year of Sean Payton as head coach.
Insanity.
That word. I will get really close to saying a word in the middle there that I should not say on air. So I'll let you continue to say that one. But it dates back now 4 years, maybe even a little bit further than that. And at some time you got to pay the credit card off. And it's getting to that point with the Saints. I'm not going to go as far as saying that this is going to be a bad team for a really long time, but it's starting to look that way. It really is. All right, guys. Well, thanks for tuning in for a surprise little live episode here. Some of you guys are catching this on Monday on your drive into work. So thank you guys that are listening on Apple and on Spotify and wherever you get your podcasts. Bob, you've been really busy with the keys and trying to get these articles out and opinion on articles and news and guys who are coming in to work out and just, every 5 seconds getting a notification that somebody else is hurt. So where can people keep up with your articles? I'm sure these people are going to be watching some games today, but they're also going to want to kind of read up on what's going on with their team while they're off this afternoon.
Yeah, by all means. I'm not watching a single down of football today. I've decided I'm taking the day off. Taking the day off of my viewing. But like Brendan said, I'm continuing to publish articles, as is John Hendricks, as is Kyle Mosley, through the Saints News Network. So first of all, check us all out on the Saints News Network page and your SI.com team site. I also post all of my articles, opinions, and show links on my personal pages, which are Bob Rose, Facebook, at Bobby R 2613 on the X Twitter. Make sure that you are following our Bayou Blitz Facebook group and Bayou Blitz Twitter page. And on that note, obviously, check out Brendan and I and our weekly podcast, weekly episode of the Bayou Blitz, which will be this Wednesday. And this Wednesday we are having our good friend Tyrone Hughes on with us. Tyrone is coming on to tell us his view, viewpoint of the state of the Saints. So I can't wait to hear that. Tyrone's always a good interview, and he is also helping Brendan and I with the Bayou Blitz, because we are proud to be a part of promoting the 11th annual Go Black and Gold charity fan cruise. The proceeds of this fan cruise benefit the American Cancer Society. You don't get any better than that. It is a terrific event with the ultimate fan experience and heavy involvement from former Saints greats like Tyrone Hughes, Delvin Breaux, who we interviewed a few weeks back, Michael Lewis, Courtney Roby, Lance Moore, and more to come, no pun intended. We'll be having, obviously, Tyrone and Delvin already. We'll be having these guys and more to help promote this event over the next several weeks and months. The cruise is through the Seven Seas Travel Agency and will be held from March 27th through the 31st. You can get your booking info, or if you're interested in helping sponsor the event, you can contact the Seven Seas Travel Agency or Shireen DeWalt through the Go Black and Gold Celebrity Charity Fan Cruise Facebook page, which we also help promote through our Bayou Blitz and Bayou Blitz affiliated groups, Who Dat Domination, Smoking Hot New Orleans Saints Social Club, and Under the Dome.
Guys, we're really excited to have a lot of these guys on over the next few weeks. It definitely brings a little bit of juice to the pod. It gives us some fun things to talk about in a season where there's been less than fun things to talk about. And you also do get some inside scoop from these guys that have been in the locker rooms. Like, Bob, you and I have covered this team so long. We haven't had a whole lot of opportunities where there's been like really bad years or really bad injury bugs. And to be able to bring a guy like Tyrone in on Wednesday and be like, hey, look, like, did you experience anything like this in your NFL career? And what are the vibes of the locker room? Like, what's going on in people's heads when your starting quarterback goes down and this and that? That's going to be interesting conversation, because Bob and I can't give you the same insights as Tyrone Hughes, Delvin Breaux, Lance Moore, etc., because we've never been in those locker rooms where things like that have happened. Star players going down, guys know what's going on in the locker room. They know when the national pundits are calling for people's jobs. Like, what is that like in the locker room? How does that affect teams? Those are going to be fun conversations to have. So definitely make sure you're tuning in on Wednesdays throughout the rest of the season. Obviously this week with Tyrone, but we're going to have so many guys throughout the remainder of the year. So definitely check us out. For myself, you can follow me virtually everywhere at BT Boylan. Follow the pod on X Twitter at Bayou Blitz Pod, and continue to download and support via Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. Well, until Wednesday, that's Bob Rose. I'm Brendan Boylan. Hope you guys find some peace, spread love, and practice positivity, whether you're watching football or not today. Hope you guys enjoy your weekend. We'll see you on Wednesday. Who dat?